Continental knitting. You want to learn how to do it? If you are either a English style knitter or a total beginner knitter, I just have the project for you. You're gonna do those arm warmers. Imagine it with red fingernails. If you are an English style knitter working on a small project to get your continental knitting up to speed, this whole tutorial is probably easy for you. You can just flip through it and do it by heart if you're an experienced knitter, and just use the project to practice knitting and purling stitch. I think after those arm warmers are done, you're used to continental knitting. If you're a beginner knitter, it's a very good pattern for a beginner knitter because it gives you all the basic techniques and it's very easy. You will learn how to do stockinette stitch on 2 needles, and you will learn how to knit in the round with a whole needle set. Provisional cast on, Kitchener stitch, pick up stitches for the border stretchy fabric, how to cast off, and then you will learn how to weave in the ends. You would need a yarn that is in between worsted and sport weight, 4mm double pointed needles. I have those awesome little caps that you can put on and make any double pointed knitting needle to a single pointed knitting needle. A set of double pointed thinner knitting needles, those are 3mm. For weaving in all those little ends, you will need a wool needle. Then for the provisional cast on, you will need a scrap yarn that is about the same thickness as your yarn you will use for the project. Lastly, if you don't want to forcefully rip your yarn apart, how I did this in this video, you can take a pair of scissors. If I actually use just a nail scissor. And you need a lot of patience if you are a new knitter. Alright, let's start. First I show you in a short sequence how I knit continentally and how I learned it in school when I was a kid. Take the yarn between your pinky and ring finger, bring it back to the front between your middle finger and index finger, and wrap it around your index finger. This is where you keep the tension. You can have it looser or tighter by movement of your index finger. For knit stitch, you enter your needle, you keep the tension here so it's easy to grab the yarn without it sliding off the right needle, and you pull through. For purl stitch, go in, put your thumb here to keep things in place, twist the right needle on the top of the thumb to grab the yarn. At that moment you keep the yarn on the needle, on the right needle, and you take it through the loop. First I will show you the provisional cast on, how I do it. I will cast on 40 stitches because 40 stitches gives me about this much length of my underarm, and that leaves me a little space if I add the borders afterwards, so the arm warmer won't go all the way up to here or it's too short. So for me, 40 stitches are perfect. Start with a slip knot with your scrap yarn. I always make some stitches, some single crochet stitches, so by the end I can always pick up some stitches if needed. And then I take my working needle and put the thread underneath the needle and pick up the stitch to put it on the needle, my first stitch. Then my second stitch. I just crochet my stitches onto the needle. Always go behind the needle with the thread and pick it up from the front side. If you use a thinner yarn, you might cast on 50 stitches, or if you use a thicker yarn, which I wouldn't recommend because then the arm warmers get really bulky, but if you want to do that, you might want to cast on 35 stitches or something. You would have to measure it on your arm as you go. If you have enough stitches on your needle, you can end the chain again with just some air stitches and break your yarn. Pull the thread through. Now this side is where we started and this side is where we ended. So the side where you start, I always make a knot to remember that this side is not open for zipping, but when it's time to open the provisional cast on, you have to open from here, because from here you won't be able to unzip it, just from this side. And that's the provisional cast on. And I just start knitting. For the arm warmers, I will do the stockinette stitch. Hang in there, I'll show you in a moment how to do this. The stockinette stitch looks on one side flat with these V-shaped stitches, and on the other side you see ridges. To achieve this, you have to knit 2 rows, one knit stitch and the other one purl stitch. There are some patterns that call for lifting off the first stitch and then start knitting. For this pattern I'm doing, I'm just gonna knit the first stitch too. So that's the movement. I show you first medium tempo or slow. You go into the stitch from the left side, not this side, from the left side. So you can grab the yarn, pull the yarn through and lift off for the next stitch. In Switzerland, when you learn this as a kid, you say reinstechen, umschlagen, durchziehen und runterlassen, which means go in, take the yarn, pull it through and lift off. Reinstechen, umschlagen, durchziehen und runterlassen. Now I do it a little faster. When you knit, you make sure your yarn supply is moving smoothly and you always have the same tension. If you sometimes, like if you get really tight here, the stitches get more tight and then your knitting is uneven. This sample here is a little uneven because the yarn I use is handspun. It's handspun yarn. But if you have yarn that is store-bought, my stitches would be very even, because the handspun yarn gets thicker and thinner, and I like that look actually. It looks more organic. So I'm at the end of the row now. I will just knit the last stitch as well. Now we are on the wrong side of the stockinette stitch. Here you see the ridges, because how we do the stitch here, you cause a ridge like those little bows here on the other end. And if I would continue with just the knit stitch here, see, I would have the bows on the other side. See that? I don't want that. If I would do this on each row, if I would just do knit stitch on each row, I would create something that's called garter stitch. Then I have on each side ridges, which is a very thick and stretchy fabric. This is less thick and less stretchy, the stockinette stitch. What we do on this side is reverse the knit stitch into a purl stitch. Instead of going into the stitch from the left side, I go in from the right side now. Go in, hold the stitch with my thumb, wrap the yarn around my needle and pull through and lift off the stitch. Go in, wrap around, pull through, in. So I take my thumb here, so I hold the stitch and can wrap around the yarn and pull the yarn through. Also hier ist reinstechen, umschlagen, durchziehen und runterlassen. And what this creates is the ridges on this side and the V-shaped stitches on the other side. Then I go to the end of the row again. And this is the stockinette stitch. Now I would start again with the knit stitch, going in from the left side. So my knitted square is big enough now that it goes around my arm. There are 40 stitches and 48 rows, because I want to have, when I knit in the round afterwards, to add the borders, 12 stitches on every needle. To count rows, you take the V shapes you see on the fabric, the V shapes that go upwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Each V is one row. Alternatively, in stockinette stitch, you can count each ridge for one row on the purl side. Let's just count the purple here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 purple rows. Other stitches, like in a garter stitch, where you have always a purl row and a knit row alternating on each side, you have to count the V's and the ridges, and then it will always be 2 rows. So if you count just the ridges in a garter stitch, you could count the ridges and count 2, 4, 6, 8. But this is stockinette stitch, so we're not doing that here. When I did the provisional cast on, I started the cast on this side where I have the knot, and then I started knitting from right to left and then turned and then had the wrong side. So I started with the knitting side, with the right side, and I also end with the right side. So when I opened the provisional cast on, both of my needles will face this direction when I put in the needle, so they're both this direction. So afterwards I can sew them, the ends together with the Kitchener stitch. Let's do the unzipping. So here I come to my first stitch that I unzip. See, now this is live. I could pull out everything at once, but I don't want to lose a stitch, so I'm going to do it stitch by stitch. Go into each stitch from the back, otherwise your stitches will be twisted on the needle. And that's it. Now that we have our square finished, I show you the Kitchener stitch to combine each side of the square into a tube. For the Kitchener stitch I need a needle, a wool needle, and I have my knitted, the right side facing out. You could use that same technique to close socks or to stitch any 2 knitted pieces together that you want to have joined so you can see the seam afterwards. The working needles is in the back right now, and I have to cut the yarn. I'm gonna do it about a little more than 3 times as long as the work is. Your thread comes from the back, so you go into the front needle. You keep the needle where the thread comes from in the back. You lift this one off like it would be a knitted stitch. You can remember that because that's what you would do. It's the knitted surface. You pick that up as it would be a knitted stitch. Then you go into this second stitch as if you would purl, and you pull the yarn through. You pick up the first stitch as if it would be purl and go through the second stitch as if it would be knitted, and you pull the yarn through. You don't pull too tight, but tight enough that it's about the tension you have in your whole knitting piece. Then the first stitch again, it's the knitted side. You pick it up as a knitted stitch, go as purl and leave the stitch on the needle. Then the back piece, which is the purl side, you lift off the first stitch as a purl stitch, like if you would purl, and pull the yarn through as if you would knit. And then we do that for the whole row, till all the stitches are sewn together. And now you can already see that little piece here. The stitch looks like a knitted stitch, and you don't see where it ends and where it starts, so it looks like it's all endlessly knit around. So when the yarn comes from the back, I go to the front, pick it up as knitted, pull through as purl, and in the back pick up as purl, pull through as knitted. So the last stitches, the last two stitches from the front and back needle, I pulled the yarn through just once, otherwise it will give a bump. So it's basically a half stitch. If you do a whole stitch, it will give a little bump. All right. This is my wonderful raggedy arm warmer so far. When I look at it, I think it will be more interesting to have it inside out. It looks almost like a woven fabric. I like it. The next step in this project is to pick up stitches for the border. Let's do it. And I cast them on the wrong side, so the seam is in the back side. I'm gonna have 12 stitches on each needle. You could obviously have the right side out if you like that better. I'm going to do the borders with smaller needles. For the main part here I used 4.5 millimeter needles, and for the borders I use 3 millimeter needles, because if I pick up every stitch along the way it will be wider than this actual piece, and if I use smaller needles, I guess it will give me a straight line and still be stretchy. I start with one stitch behind the thread. You can also use a new thread for this. I go in between each vertical line and make sure that there are 2 threads on top. Zes, 8, 12, that's 12. And then add the next needle. You can choose the color of your borders, obviously, and you can either do them identically on either side, or do something completely different on each side, add stripes, do it with one color. It's up to you. I picked up all the stitches all around, 12 stitches on each needle. Now I'm gonna add my other yarn that I spun to make the border. Since I take the purl side, I think I want the border to look knit but still stretchy, so I will knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1, and then just do this as long as I feel like it looks good. Maybe I make a red stripe in between. Purl, knit, 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 purl, then go on to the next needle. For the ones of you that haven't knit ever with needles in the rounds, that's how you do it. You basically just continue like it would be the same needle. No big deal. Only thing you have to make sure is that you don't have the thread in between those two stitches too long, otherwise you will see it later on. So keep your yarn nice and tensioned. I need the whole border here. Now that the border is finished, we have to cast off. Since this is kind of wider, even though I used the thinner needles, it's not wider, it's about the same, but it can stretch more. I'm gonna just use a very simple cast off, not anything fancy, stretchy. I think it will be wide enough to fit over the arm, even if I take it to the back of the arm. And I'm gonna go with the pattern. So I'm gonna use the red color here, the red variegated color, to cast off. So I'm gonna do the first stitch, knit, second stitch, knit, and then lift the first one over. Again, knit one stitch and knit the last stitch over. Then I get to a purl stitch, which I'm gonna purl and lift that one over, knit, lift that one over, knit, lift that one over, knit, lift over, purl, lift over, and that gives me a simple border. Knit stitch. It look all on the top. It all looks like a horizontal knit stitch, and it will be just a small little red line at the end of my border here, which is not quite as stretchy, but that's okay because I don't want it to get bigger. It's stretchy enough to get my arm in. When you do the stitch, you have to be careful that you don't have too much tension, otherwise it will get very tight and then you're not getting anything in there afterwards. So you have to be a little looser with this cast off in your tension than when you're knitting. Here's my last stitch. Now to close off the round, instead of just pulling it through here and have this gap here, I'm going into that first V-stitch, that you see that first loop I made, and knit into that one and lift the previous stitch over this and then pull through. So here, see this, I closed around. Here I can break the yarn. And pull through. Then I have to weave in the end. So this is the border. Now the first border is done, we do the same thing on the other side. Now the first arm warmer is finished and we have to weave in ends. You probably won't have as many yarn ends to weave in as me because I have this handspun yarn that has a lot of threads hanging out from the way it was spun. But to weave in ends in a way that you can't see it, even if you would use the knit side of the fabric, is actually to go in to those V-shaped, this side, go in and wrap it around each leg of those V's. Just go in a few stitches, can do one more. And then I do the same on the opposite leg and go back down, because if the yarn goes around the corner, it's less likely to be pulled out. It's less likely to be pulled out. And this is woven in now and you can't even see it. Now I can cut the end off. If I would take this as the right side, I would pull this through to the wrong side and cut it on the other side, but for me this is the wrong side, so I just cut it off here. If you want to have the knit side as a right side, you can also weave in your ends on the purl side. Show you how to do that. For that you would just take the yarn to the other side and then to weave in you can go diagonally. See all those little bows? You go diagonally on each bow. You go diagonally so the fabric stays stretchy. That's why. You pull through, you would pull through, and in the neighboring bows go back, and then you can go up again. You can do it twice or 3 times. And that would be, you would see that. If you do it like this, you would see it on the wrong side. So if you want to have the fabric reversible, so you can wear it on either side. I would still stick, I would still stick with the method I just showed you before. If you have self-striping yarn, you don't have threads here in your project unless you had to change, or you will have threads if you used yarn leftovers. You will only have to weave in ends at the end here and where you cast off your knitting. That's it. Congratulations, your first arm warmer is complete. Now you can repeat the whole process for your second arm. My daughter said they're sexy. And my daughter is always right. Yeah, fingernails, shoes, bag, they could totally go as designer accessoire. I hope you enjoyed this process. I hope you enjoy your arm warmers. Thank you very much for knitting along with me. If you want to see how I spun the yarn to those arm warmers, please watch this video. If you want to see how I came up with the idea to knit those arm warmers, watch this video. Thank you very much. I hope to see you soon again for more knit alongs, and subscribe, like, and a comment. See you next time.